In this tutorial, we're going to create a book. We'll need a couple of tools added to our shelf to do so. I'm going to hold down Command, Shift, and I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and I'm going to choose Extrude, and then I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, and I'm going to choose Insert Edge Loop. We're going to start off with a polygon cube. I'm going to go to an orthographic front or side view to introduce what will be the spine of our book. I'll hold down the space bar, and I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and you can see I've got Interactive Creation set. I'll click on Cube, I'll click and drag the thickness I'd like for the spine of my book. I'll return to my perspective view. I'm going to click and drag a bit, give this thickness to my spine of my book. I'm going to return to my orthographic view where I introduced it, which is the front, and I'm going to use the Insert Edge Loop. It's this four-cornered box with the dashed orange line through it. I'm going to click on a horizontal edge at top or bottom. You'll see now I've got a line introduced. While it's brown, if I wanted to, I could hit W on the keyboard and rearrange it. I'm going to either click back on the Insert Edge Loop tool or I'll hit G, and I'll click and drag one more. I'll hit Return, I'll hit W, and I'll go back to my object mode. Now I'm going to go to my perspective view for a moment, because what I want to do now is select this face and this face. I'll right click on my geometry, I'll choose face, I'll click, Shift select the other, and now I'm going to click on that orange box on top of the white plane to introduce my extrude tool. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to pull on my z-axis depending on how big this book I want. I'll go to my perspective view to see what I have now, and you'll see I've got the beginnings of what I would want for this book. I'm going to right click, go back to object mode. Now we've got a little bit more to do on this, but I'm going to go to my proxy, and that's not nearly what I want. I'll hit 1 to return back to my original geometry, and I'm going to go back to my top view. And I'm going to my top view because I want to start to split the geometry back where the binding of the book would be. Books always have a bit of a pinch on the inside where the pages are put together. So once again, I'll get my edge loop tool. I'll click on this side and introduce a path there. I'll click on this side, another one there. I'm going to put two more in. And then I'm going to zoom in on this. I'll hit W to go back to my object mode. Right click, choose vertex. And now I'm going to grab through all the vertices on this side and pull it in. Grab on the other side and pull it in like so. I'm going to return to my perspective view to see what I have so far. So if I go to my object mode, and I would hit 3 on the keyboard, it's starting to look pretty decent in the back, but you can see it really is kind of an anamorphic blob at this point. I'll hit 1 to return to the original geometry. Now I'm going to use that edge loop tool to shore up the edges of this so it looks boxier. Once again, I'll click on the edge loop, and I'll click on a vertical line here to introduce a horizontal path across the top part of the binding or the book. And I'll hit W on the keyboard. If I hit 3 as I'm previewing this, you can see that as I move that newly introduced line up, you'll see that it starts to maintain the integrity of the geometry. I'm not going to go too far. I'll leave it right about there. I know that I have to go around the perimeter of this object now and drop those extra paths to maintain the quality of that book shape. I'm going right to the edges here. I'll come around and I'll put one last one right here. And once again, I'm going to hit 3 on the keyboard. I'll go to my object mode, deselect, and you can see we did a pretty respectable job putting together a book. So once again, those paths can be moved. I suggest you work in 1 on your computer for 2 reasons. First, you can see where all these lines intersect. Secondly, when you're working from the proxy, you run the risk of crashing your computer if you're not working at a computer like the one in the lab. Now the last detail would be simply to throw a polygon cube in here to represent the pages. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll go to my top view, and once again I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube. I'll click and drag to make the element that would comprise the pages. I'll return to my perspective view, hit 4 on the keyboard, and I'll click and drag up to get the height roughly the way I want, and now I'll put this into position. Now I can always go into my side view at this point, and in my side view I can scale this so that it recesses the way pages in the book would. So I'll come up here just short of the top. I'll do the same for the bottom. I'm marking through all those vertices. And then on the very edge of the book, we'd probably be in a little deeper. This is all how they protect the pages, I would imagine. All right, so now if I go to my object mode, you can see now I've got a pretty decent representation of a book. Now, at the end process, I would go in and I would run a smooth on this to bump up the polys and to get this shape eventually. And there's the geometry for our book.